I want to assure you that nobody who has taken their first dose, and that I can give you complete assurance, is going to miss out on their second dose. That's point number one. Point number two is that it is a fact that there is a global problem in the supply chain of vaccines. Every single country is having problems accessing vaccines. But what we are doing is working day and night with all the different partners that we have across the world to ensure that we are able to get these vaccines in the shortest time possible in order to be able to first and foremost ensure that all frontline workers are vaccinated. Secondly, those who are most vulnerable and those living with comorbidities, is those living with comorbidity and those who have are above a certain age, again are also covered as we move towards vaccinating generally the adult population of Kenya.
So, Yvonne, the president talking about a crisis that is unfolding across the world. I mean, we saw, for example, the COVAX facility that is really what we are mainly depending on right now, disrupted by what's happening in India. They are saying, well, we have cases going up every single day, and so they are looking inwardly. Yeah. One would say India first, because they have cases right next door, so they're not going to ship anything out and leave their people here. And yet, actually, the other announcement we saw a little bit earlier, or was it later, the CAS,
Rashid
Aman, saying that 2.5 million doses
on the way
next month, but then saying something quite spectacular, 20 million doses this calendar year.
Yes. That interesting, because that would surpass the numbers that they had, which were supposed to vaccinate by 2023. So there's a couple of issues here for me. We first received 1,020,000 vaccines. We began that vaccination on the 5th of March, and then I think a few days later or weeks later, we received 100,000 from India. But to date, we have only vaccinated 196,435 people. That's just about 10% of the vaccines that have been used up in the last almost a month now, because we started on the 5th of March. For sure, in the beginning, they said there was no hesitance, and we've seen with the large number of people who are wanting to go there for the vaccine. But this is a very interesting number. I think there still needs to be more that can be done to ensure that we, vaccinate more people quickly. So for me, that is the important thing to take a look at. That speed is a bit something
actually, there
of
seems to be
concern.
a mismatch between where people really need it and where it is.
Exactly. Because, we're hearing in certain places and hospitals here, people are running out of stock. They get that replenished, running out of stock. I mean, but, there's still, an odd million, doses of vaccine yet to be, delivered to the people that need it the most. That is interesting. But then again, with the vaccine came an issue that Jamila had raised earlier about communication from the government, and that is to do with Sputnik 5. On Tuesday afternoon, the Acting Director General of Health, Dr. Amoth, said no person had taken Sputnik as they were still checking on its efficacy. The very same day, prominent lawyers, two prominent lawyers who put it out on Twitter, had gotten the vaccine. There is rumor that what the Deputy President had was Sputnik. There wasn't Oxford AstraZeneca. There's been no denial, but let's see. So who's fooling who? There was the question about emergency authorization and full market authorization, that they're not allowed to advertise it as being beneficial, over the others, and that those people who are getting it from the private, cannot stock that and deliver that, and the government one. But there are some questions that need to be answered regarding this Russian Sputnik vaccine. Who is importing it? Which is the company behind it? How many have they imported? There was a question initially about, which authorization that they received. They're charging for it. And then we hear that they've been censured even in writing, for this. And yet we still don't know
They
who
even said
this
some
is.
people were summoned.
Yeah, so there are some people who were summoned. And throughout all of those previews that we're getting from the government, they're not telling us who. They just say, yeah, we have summoned them. Who? But here's one thing that I think is very important that we'll be saying regarding this, because private sector has worked in the health sector, for a long time, and they play a very crucial role. But here is something when I was reading the Pharmacies and Poisons Board as to how they give this authorization. So first of all, it's to understand that COVAX facility is offering a no-fault compensation. Yeah, that means they indemnify the companies that produce these vaccines, which were produced rather quickly, and their greatest fear was litigation from people who suffer injury and loss. So what the government did was they offered to compensate anyone who suffers loss or injury from the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that we got through the COVAX facility. But in their own document, the Pharmacies and Poisons Board, while talking about the registration process of private vaccines, said this, and I quote, they said, such facility, which is that no-fault compensation, is not established in Kenya, and thus mechanisms for liability and protection for vaccines outside the COVAX facility vaccines need to be established. So what happens in the event of any adverse reactions from Sputnik 5? Who do we go to? Who is it that has imported it? Is the PPB going to cover? Are the Kenyan authorities going to cover for any injury, any loss, any adverse side effects, which we know are being reported even with the Oxford AstraZeneca? And that is why communication and openness on the Sputnik vaccine, which for all intents and purposes might actually be the very best. We understand WHO is yet to give us their thoughts on it, but communication around the Sputnik vaccine is very important in the country and has caught the government authorities again flat-footed as to whether they have authorization to use it, emergency use, market authorization, and the likes. And it doesn't bode well for the vaccine, which might be very beneficial.
It could be, because it has 91% efficacy.
Yeah, and it's going through a rolling review, even in Europe, as we speak now.
You speak about openness and communication and all that. Yes, we need to know a bit more about the Sputnik vaccine. I look at it this way. I look at vaccinations as a moment of nationalism. We need to look at it. We need to look at national interests. Look at what the Serum Institute of India has done. They've suspended exportation of the AstraZeneca vaccine because they're looking inwards. We need it more. So we need to look at it as a national interest issue. And I don't know why we always have to have two sides to everything, because there's already controversy about Sputnik and all that. I think we need to be on the same team when it comes to vaccines, about the supply, whether we are supplying Moderna or AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Sputnik 5. Whatever it is, you need to give the approvals that are required. The framework, look at it. Because we need it at a point where, like you're saying, we're in the third wave. You talk about the numbers. About 196,400 people have been vaccinated so far. But at the stores, where they're keeping the vaccines, over 800,000 have already been released. And you talked about some places where they're needed and they run out and all. I was looking at an article where in Mwingi, they've only had 192 people vaccinated so far at the hospital.
A whole county.
A whole county. People are not coming to be vaccinated. Number one. Number two, they're saying medical workers.
It's a sub-county.
That's a sub-county. Mwingi sub-county.
Kitui
is the county.
Kitui is the county. Yeah.
Yes, Mwingi sub-county. Number two, health workers are actually the highest in terms of vaccination. I think about over 70,000 of them, followed by teachers at 20,000.
Yeah.
But we're seeing those instances where people are going, they're told, Zimeisha, come back tomorrow and all that. So there's an uptake of vaccine. I was looking at a research that was done by an organization, I'm going to try and find it here if I don't, Africa Voices Foundation. It's a non-profit organization in Kenya and in the UK. And they did a survey, and they said it showed that 83.1% of Kenyans are ready to take the vaccine. This is compared to 62% in December. In fact, Kenya, I think, ranks third behind the UK and China, who are at 89% and 88.6% in terms of those who are ready to take the vaccine, which is really, really good. So the vaccines need to be available. So just if there's any framework, if there any laws, if there's any clearance that needs to be done, wacha ifanyike. Because the worry is like what happened with cancer. Who owns what company?
Yeah.
Who will be given this contract? Who will be given the contract to supply the Sputnik 5? And I think in my opinion, the government has not really rallied behind the whole vaccine question. Remember, we had even the COVID-19 fund that was established in the beginning. We had money being raised for masks, for PPEs, for sanitizers, and we still need those things. We still need them. I think it's about time the government rallies behind this whole vaccine question. Do what needs to be done. Get the vaccines into people's arms.
And remember, they have an expiry date.
If you are to think about it,
quickly.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that we will actually need private companies, to bring or at least vaccines brought on private terms. I mean, for example, even if you were to take what the CAS was saying today, that they will get some 20 million by the end of this year. 20 million is still not even half of Kenyans, you understand? So that means that you will still need more of those private arrangements coming into the country. That's why the whole thing of transparency is so important. The whole thing of the approval process. I mean, what's so difficult about just saying, there are this or that company and whatever? Because those companies are mentioned everywhere around the world, that this one is being brought by this company. This is a company that has applied, and they are bringing in this number of doses. So combined with the COVAX one, total as a country, we are expecting this number of doses by June, May, whatever. I mean, that will really ease the nerves of quite a number of people, Francis.
Absolutely. And you see...
And you are having the last word, because we really need to...
Oh, yes. It is a nice thing to do. And I look at it this way. What is very, very important is the whole question of transparency. You remember when the testing process started, there were concerns about the availability of the testing facilities in public hospitals vis-a-vis private hospitals. Then came the question of cost. And there were various amounts that were being charged in various facilities. So that started raising issues. And then came the whole question of procurement of COVID-19 materials. And right here in this show, we had what did you call it? Early system.
Early warning system.
Early warning system.
Early warning system. That something was going to happen, and actually did happen. Actually, that matter is yet to be resolved. So those are one too many scenarios. So even in the vaccine situation, the most important thing and the best way to deal with it is transparency. Let the country know who is importing what, from where, what amount, and at how much will it be, so that Kenyans have all the information that they require. Secondly, the free vaccine that is being dispensed in public facilities and private facilities and faith-based organizations, where is it available, so that people also don't queue for too long and they get disappointed that they haven't got it. It is a good challenge when we have many people wanting to be vaccinated. It's a good challenge. Rather than a scenario where there is resistance, there is anxiety, there is very slow response. So I think what we are seeing now in terms of the people who are willing to be vaccinated is a good challenge. So get out there, let the government avail the vaccine, let people be vaccinated, and as we move on, let there be transparency. Because if you don't give people information, you can also not stop them from speculating. So give them information in a timely manner, so that you deal with the whole question of rumors, propaganda, and innuendo.